afternoon, everyone, and thank you to both Leisha and Diarmuid for beginning our event here this afternoon. This is the final event of the 2025 Achill Heinrich Böll Memorial Weekend, and we could say that we have kept the best to last, but no, it's just a continuation of an amazing weekend that we've had, and I want to thank everybody who has participated, and most especially everybody here who has stayed and been part of the audience over the weekend. So we have our Achill writers who write here in Nagle or who come and have written here in Nagle. And the theme of that was presented to the group was the theme of the weekend, which was lost in translation or found in translation, and we gave them a very broad remit with that. So let's see what they've come up with. And to begin this evening or this afternoon, I'd like to invite Patrick Stack O'Neill. Patrick was born in Limerick. His mother was from Listowel. His grandfather was a Garda sergeant, and he instilled in him the love of language, writing, storytelling. Patrick is currently writing a series of short stories called Seven Doors. He lived in London, Brussels, California. One of his sons and his granddaughter live in Sweden, and the other son in New York. He has been living on Achill full-time since 2019, restoring a 1932 stone cottage. So I'd like you to welcome Pat Stack O'Neill.
Ready to go? I'm going to not read it as was originally published, so I'll just tell it in story format if that's okay with everybody. The piece is called Is She One of Ours? She was born in London in 1957, brought back by the Catholic Church to Cork. 3 months later, she was adopted by an Irish couple who had no children at that time. They gave her first name, her middle name, and their surname. Her birth cert that was with her stated that she was born in Dublin. So rather than lost in translation, we have lost in falsification with this story. She was never in Dublin. That document remained a document that was to haunt her in later life when you have an inaccuracy in your birth cert, particularly when she applied for immigration status to the US. The US immigration, as we know right now, it was always difficult, particularly when you got contradictions. Her attitude was, I can't have been born in two places, there's something wrong. She always knew she was adopted, and her parents were very open about it, that adopted her, and they knew she would search for her natural parents someday. Irish law protected the privacy of the mother very, very tightly, so that data records were very difficult other than the false birth cert. She started looking when she was in 82, when she was 26. Breakthrough came 24 long years later when the UK laws changed to allow Irish children born in London or UK of an Irish parent to be given access to their full UK file. She was contacted by the Westminster Adoption Agency to say that this situation, a law change applied to her, and that they would be sending a social worker to Ireland that she could meet with and share the information. She knew that once she stepped into that procedure now, her life was about to change as she walked through that particular door, not knowing what that file contained. It seemed like an eternity when the day arrived, travelling to Cork. On the journey, she thought about the magnitude and the discovery of her true self and all the false information that was in her background, particularly her birth data. The meeting was held in a health board. in a very sparse room where the paint was peeling off the walls. There was nothing on the walls. There was a steel cabinet, filing cabinet in the corner, 3 chairs and a desk. The social worker entered the room, not saying very much, not many casual conversation given the circumstances and the purposes of the meeting. She went to the filing cabinet, opened it up, and withdrew a brown public sector type file. And she remembered clearly that file had a piece of cord with 2 metal ends. Those you remember that, in the corner of the file to make sure the documents wouldn't fall out. There was an awkward period of silence, and the social worker slid the closed file across the table to her. She didn't react immediately. In a way, didn't want to make that step to open up a whole new chapter of her life, as you can imagine. Who are my parents? Are they alive? Do I have brothers and sisters? Are they alive? Where are they in the world? And they could be anywhere. 2 identities. The identity that she knew was that parents that are adopted in Ireland and her natural parents. We're all lucky to have 1 set of parents. She now is about to find out she has actually two sets of parents. After a long period of silence, she slid the file across the table to her husband, who fully understood what she was going through. They had met when he was 16 and she was 15, so he'd been with her story all that long. He paused and took a deep breath, and eventually decided, if I don't do this, she's not going to do it. He opened the file, and then a piece of newspaper, obviously not attached to that cord, floated out of the file and made its way like a leaf or a feather onto the floor. Glad of the temporary distraction, he closed the file and he leant down, he picked up the newspaper, nothing really particular what he could see, until he turned it over the opposite side. And much to his amazement, it was a photograph of her when she was 16 at a rowing regatta in Limerick, when she was there as a spectator. It not only showed her a photograph, but it gave her name and address when the newspapers didn't have privacy laws. It stated her full name and where she lived. That wasn't what haunting. Then he saw in handwriting in the top right-hand corner of the newspaper clip, "Is she one of ours?" That's when she was 16. That was written. She'd been adopted 16 years prior. So immediately there was a problem, because it became someone was out there tracking her. That newspaper article wasn't a Cork newspaper article where she was adopted. So how did it find its way into her file? The file wasn't opened, it was reclosed, it was given to her, and the door opened till the day came when she was to have the time, the patience and the energy to see what was in it. Her life was about to change forever. Thanks a lot.
You're going to have to come back next year for the rest of the story. Thank you, Pat. Next up is Cathy O'Loughlin. Cathy lives part-time in Nagle and part-time up the country. We won't say where. But Cathy has been part of the Writers Group here in Nagle for quite a number of years now. And maybe she started to write here even. I don't know. Cathy, come ahead. Thank you.
Hi everyone. What a lovely walk we had this morning in Corone. It was special. Wherever Tomas is, if he's still here, he's special. Anyway, it was a wonderful day for it. And I'll get on with this. Living in the romantic city of Rome. Maria, my daughter, had a dream that she was living in the ancient city of Rome. She decided, out of the blue, that she would go and live there and work as an English teacher. So she looked up the internet and found a job. She had never studied Italian, but it was her intention to take Italian lessons once she had settled in. For the first couple of weeks, she stayed in a hostel, sharing with 16 other people, coming and going, most students interrailing. It was difficult to make friends in that scenario. She applied for a job which was run by a Scottish woman who offered her a good salary, lots of bonuses, none of which came to pass. She had to travel on public transport to teach English to students in schools all over the suburbs. She was given no extra payment to travel and no maps of the area, so it took a lot of effort to get to these out-of-the-way jobs. But she had no choice. She had to earn her living until she found a more stable job. She was still staying in the hostel and set about finding a place to rent. She eventually found a room to share in the Trastevere area of Rome, a really good place to live, with all sorts of cafes, good restaurants and a lovely little market down the road, selling all sorts of fresh fruit and vegetables. She went to view the room. Although expensive, she thought it would be a good place to live. On the way into the building, she met the French girl who was advertised the room. She took her up on the lift to the upstairs apartment. Maria tried to have a conversation with the girl, but she said very little in the lift and just brought her to the apartment. She introduced her to Debbie, an American girl who was in charge of renting the rooms in the apartment. The French woman disappeared into the bathroom and left Maria alone to be interviewed by the American girl. Debbie showed her the spare room with cold tiles on the floor. Maria was to share with another girl who wasn't there at the time. Debbie, the American girl, said she had very bad luck with people sharing. They either had problems with drugs, stealing, sleeping too long, or getting up too early. And this French girl was very odd and a little mad, and they were delighted she was leaving. Maria was a little suspicious by the way Debbie was talking and didn't know who was mad, the French girl leaving or the American girl in charge of the rental. Maria put her suspicions aside as she was so keen to get out of the hostel. She paid over her large deposit and moved in the following weekend. She was sharing with Jody, a quiet and gentle Californian girl. The person in charge was the other, Debbie, was sharing with a very loud Italian. At this point, Maria was also tired of her teaching job because of all the travelling involved. So she applied for a new job and was successful in her interview. This was the British school, which was run by a lovely principal and very close to her new apartment in Trastevere. Things were looking up. She had found the perfect place to live, and her new job was well paid, and the children in the school were a pleasure to teach. The school was near a park, and she loved to walk through the park to the school every day. After a number of weeks living in the Trastevere area, she arrived home from her school to hear a row going on in the apartment. Maria was told by the American girl in charge of the apartment that money was missing from her purse. And had she noticed anything missing? Maria thought for a moment and said, yes, she had noticed, but wasn't absolutely sure. She pointed the finger at Maria's flatmate, Jody. Maria soon realised this was a set-up. The American girl told Judy she would have to leave by midnight that night. Maria decided she was not going to stay there either, with such false accusations. She rang the landlord, who said there was nothing he could do. It was all in the hands of the American girl who was in charge of the rentals. So Maria asked a friend if she could bring her suitcases to her flat that very night and left the Trastevere flat immediately. The American girl kept her deposit and Jody's too. This was how she ran her little business. Maria moved into her tiny apartment until she found her own place a little further out of the city, sharing with other girls. Living in Rome taught Maria quite a few hard lessons, which were lost in translation.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, we have Denise Nagle. Denise is a Mayo-based teacher whose poetry and memoir have been published in national and international journals and anthologies and has been broadcast on RTE's Sunday Miss Me. She is a member of the Castlebar and Achill-based writing groups. Denise, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. I have 3 poems, if you'll have them. The first 2 are directly related to the theme in that they're about finding things, I suppose, in translation through working with Ukrainians, teaching English to Ukrainians. It's an amalgamation of different people I've met along the way. Some of them I would have worked with in Nagle and some elsewhere. So the first one is called First Lesson. First lesson. I follow the advice, avoid emotive subjects like war or home or fathers. Use everyday resources, colourful leaflets, magazines. His first topic, I decide, will be food. Our text, a glossy pamphlet of fruit and vegetables from Lidl. I choose the words he'll learn, those a 10-year-old is likely to eat, those in season, those which are sweet. We enunciate strawberries, apples, potatoes, like overzealous actors. He wants to say watermelon. His tapping finger insists. I relent and name it, and then his first sentence. I am sad, watermelon, grandmother grow in garden. A ragged montage plays behind my eyes. Headscarfed babushkas sob in gardens. Planted rockets are like metal sunflowers. My first lesson. You can't seal sadness out. Grief can drop through a letterbox, can become one of your 5 a day. The second one is happier. The second one is a happier poem called Common Ground. We are fluent in Google Translate. I listen to inscrutable monologues you speak into your phone. Trace your tone, the lift of an eyebrow, tilt of your head. These shrugs, lilts for a parlour game I play as we walk the beach. Now and then there's the thrilling ambush of a common word. Arbitrary utterances like shkola for school, accordion for accordion, or who knew it, psoriasis. I marvel at the filaments that reached and knit in the dark spaces of history, to mushroom here as tenacious words, thousands of miles and years from their home. How yours, Mariupol, was named by the Greeks. Was it for fashion or to whitewash a prior wastage? How huge things like hubris and the rise and fall of empires allow us to walk here, talk here, new friends, on common ground. The last one is very, very loosely based on the theme. It's about a time here in Nagle a few years ago where about 12 of us went on a full moon swim in Kim, and we were really lucky. We were accompanied by bioluminescence in the water, so it was really magical. So the idea of the poem, the idea of it with the theme is that it's kind of, just the word bioluminescence as the title, it loses something in the translation. It's not comparable. It was really magical. Bioluminescence. There is the poetry of the sea, its rhythms and the tides rhyming couplets, the sibilant split against rock, collars of lace fizzing the strand. There are the little dramas, the ensemble cast, gaudying the beach, silent lines spoken underwater, a chorus of joy which slinks to the wings until next time. There are the one-man shows, limbs cutting through velvet, the sun's sift and trickery of light that might augur basking sharks. But this begs bigger comparison. October, the full moon hides in ink dark, 12 shapes spill themselves to water, its secrets spoken now in the millions sparklings and traceries of lights their arms and legs unleash. The world upturned, its 12 bedazzled bodies head over heels in a swell of skittish stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. That was beautiful. Next up, we have Seán O'Malley. Seán lives and writes in Nagle. He's also a member of our Heinrich Böll committee. And yes, welcome, Seán. An introduction is short and sweet.
Hello, everybody. Robert Frost's most famous and widely diffused aphorism on translating or on not translating poetry. He is reported to have said that poetry is what gets left out in translation, according to one authority, or that poetry is what gets lost in translation. Whether he said this or not is open to debate, but the point stands. Translation from language to language is difficult. Great works in other languages need great translations and great translators. I feel indebted to the writers who struggle over words, sentences, the whole fabric of paragraph, chapter, book, to evoke something of the original in an echo. Without their efforts, so many books that expanded me would have remained out of my reach, beyond my imagination. I'm going to read two poems that are connected to the theme. This first poem is about the specific nature of two places, geographically and geologically different, and of how nature can be transformed with effort from one form into another. From the city to the stars, rocks emerge. In the freshening darkness, as the orange glow fades, constellations brighten that we name differently, you and I. A parallax of mythology blurring the stories in the sky. You tell me of the Font de Gaume cave, how the air changes, still, distant from the wind above, hanging. Cold, the stone streaked both the colour of the last of night and the edge of dawn of day, pale and undefined. The surface of the stone leads the eye, hand, brush of the painter. The contours of nature revealed here as the form of an auroch. There, the haunches and horns of licking reindeer. In ochre paint carried from earth's skin to the depth below. Later, I talk of rocks on these islands. Hand smoothed to allow swirls and whorls of whirlpools and galaxies be carved. The beauty of nature seen and yet to be seen. Grey sentinels under the passing hues of the sky. The metamorphosis of soft-edged clouds. Solid always from day to night to day, from sun to star to sun. But rock, by nature folded and shaped, by forces that must, that will, by time, pressure, heat alchemized, become ruby, emerald, sapphire, diamond, hidden. Words on leaves of paper settle in layers, bound, pressed into meanings, a geology of the imagination. Some cross boundaries, become laminates of language, the pressure transforming. Gemstones are found in translation. The second poem is very much about my childhood and my mother's childhood and childhoods in Duiga. And it's one part of three poems. The poems are called Umbra, Penumbra and Antumbra, and I'm reading the third part, Antumbra. These are the three distinct parts of a shadow. Most often, the shadows cast by celestial bodies. Antumbra is like a total eclipse, when the shadow is on top of a bright object and you can still see the ring of brightness around the outside. This poem was inspired by stories of my childhood, but also of translation. Like we know of the translation of hieroglyphs by Champollion in the 1820s, based on his work on the Rosetta Stone. You know, imagine being the first person to read a language for 1500 years. But also imagine being the last person to speak a language 1500 years ago. While we don't know that person, amazingly, we do know the final inscription ever written in hieroglyphs and who wrote it. It is the graffito of Esmet Akhom, and Esmet Akhom wrote it on the birthday of Osiris in the year 110. Translated into the Georgian calendar, that is the 24th of August in 394 AD. This graffito is written on an island temple in Philae in Aswan, Egypt. He hopes that his script will last for all time and eternity. The temple at Philae was due to be drowned in the Aswan Dam to control the Nile for electricity. But it was rescued, translated piece by piece to higher land on a different island. The effort we will go to sometimes to save what is important. This is Antumbra. The corncrake's call has slipped my sandscape, faded from the field below, the now rusting scythe as far away in time as a small boy listening at night with his uncle, window open, warm twilight deepening to the rough rhythmic rasp of a male bird's song filling the room. The scythe cuts slowly in summer, the tread of my uncle steady in the heat of those high sun days. The long grass sheared in the same pattern every year, a maze of familiar simplicity, the curve of the land the same, the handle and the blade the same, the whetstone the same, the sharp edge laying the long grass down as hay. The secretive corncrake, its temple of hay, pale gold like Philae at sunset, creeps round the blade and the uncle, searching for uncut shelter. Philae, to be drowned at Aswan, was resurrected, relocated in space and time. The final words of ancient Egypt, hieroglyphs carved sharp in stone, spoken there, heard there, the 24th of August, 394 AD. For all time and eternity, a desire to be heard, be remembered, be restored. Thank you.
Very good. Now we'll have a piecing of music. Between the two of you, it is.
Think something.
Think something.
Story.
Right, we're going to play a Soontree. I want people to sleep, I know it was warm, but we won't go on too long. So this is a tune as a blessing to the 10 boys who lost their lives in Kirkintilloch in 1937. So rather than lament them, to send them out a lovely positive blessing to say, sleep peacefully now.
How beautiful, and a lovely tribute to those young men. Yeah. Did you write it? Did you compose it? Leisha composed that piece. And it's sort of like you said, it's a blessing rather than a lament. Yeah, beautiful, thank you. Okay, next up is Martina O'Connor. Martina embodies the prompt, lost, or found in translation, like few others could. A polyglot and multicultural artist and writer, Martina has lived, worked, and created across Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, Brazil, Mexico, and on. But now, she's here in the west coast of Ireland, here in Achill. Well, Tommy. She's fluent in several languages. She not only navigates linguistic differences, but lives them. Sometimes with humour, sometimes with confusion, and often with profound insight. Her works brings those lyric perspectives into poetry and art and are rich in texture, feeling, and story. Martina.
Good afternoon, everyone. Moving countries and speaking several languages comes with being lost in translation. For many people, so lost or found in translation, take for instance the English speaker in Spain who says they are embarazada, only to be met with stunned silence because they have just announced they are pregnant instead of embarrassed. Or the traveller from Germany wishing someone a hearty gute Fahrt and wondering why everyone is laughing at their well-meant wishes for good travels. Then there's the French learner proudly asking for condoms at the breakfast table, mistaking préservatif for preserves. The Italian tourist confidently ordering pepperoni on their pizza, only to be served a mountain of bell peppers. Happened to me, not spicy sausages. And of course, the English word gift means a present. Don't do that in German, because it means poison. Translation, I found out, is less about words and more about where these words land. And sometimes it's not just language, it's about local knowledge and culture. So whether you are familiar now with sailing terminology, or you grew up in the west of Ireland, or like me, first heard the term Galway hooker after moving to Ireland, we may all hear the same word, but we all experience completely different stories. My poem, which I'm going to read, is called Rainbows Are for Galway Hookers. And it plays with this kind of translation that happens between cultures, boats, and bodies, and the color that leaks through when the meaning shifts. I hope you enjoy. Rainbows are for Galway hookers. Red sails, tarred body, bluff boat with year. See her sail windward. Chitty chat chatty, the fishermen's wives, hear them talk leeward, spinning their yarn. About her, she walks windward, red lips, worn body, that she sells to keep hunger at bay. Fishermen's hook and lines ready to haul in the catch of the day. He strikes the foresail, then trims the mainsail, tied to the cleat, he clenches the helm. Hooks and lines ready, he hauls in the catch. She jibs, her world is hard. He steers, his world turns soft. On the Galway hooker, actors in each other's play, he steers their fate. Together they head up to the bitter end, the free side of the line. Thank you.
Oh yes, oh yes. How often we can get caught in words that we think is something and it's totally, I've been there. And next we have Siobhán Flynn. Siobhán's been coming to Achill for quite some time. She has quite a list to her achievements. She was selected for Freedom to Write 2024, the Poetry Ireland's Introduction 2023, and won the Courch New Writing Prize for Poetry in 2022. She was nominated for a Hennessy New Irish Writing Award and took part in the inaugural Daedalus Press mentorship programme. Collections of her work were highly commended in the Munster Literature Centre Food for Poetry chapbook. Should have read it properly. Lost in Translation competition, and twice in the Patrick Kavanagh Award. Her poetry has appeared in the Irish Times, the Poetry Bus, Amsterdam Quarterly, Dreich, Skylight 47, Abridged, the Stony Thursday book, and elsewhere. She is working on her first collection of poetry, and we are very pleased to have Siobhán with us here this afternoon.
Well, what Lost in Translation with me, the highlight of my writing career so far was my residency in the Heinrich Böll cottage last November during the wonderful weather of snow and storms and electricity cuts, and it was absolutely magical. But when the weather forecast came about the snow, I said, oh, I better go and get emergency supplies like wine. I went over to Super Value and I was told, oh no, don't worry, it'll probably only be a bit of sleet. Snow never sticks on Achill. So this is called Snow Never Sticks on Achill. Snow never sticks on Achill, but all night it tumbled and fluffed, through white cashmere over rusty sedge, blinds up and wham in the optic nerve. Nature had redecorated overnight. A bubble of urgency to get outside, to touch cold made manifest. Glory in the crisp underfoot squeak. Wonder where the sheep are. Stamp footprints on the blankness. Kick flakes up into powdered arcs. Confetti myself with handfuls and whoop into the benign blue sky. I hope nobody saw me because I was running around the garden like a lunatic. Anyway, I love fairy tales, and I've always wondered what happened to the characters after the story ends. This is, the woods are full of princes. All older sons, once handsome and rich, ex-favourites, too ashamed to go home after their failed quests. They all have a story. It's the same story. Lost out to youngest brothers or poor but honest farm boys. They hang out at the gingerbread house. It's a bar now. Gretel took over. She reckoned the witch owed her. Her sauerkraut is legendary, although she doesn't serve wurst in deference to the three little pigs. The two youngest pigs drink a lot, play dominoes with the wolf, who's getting on. They all get along now. There's no huffing or puffing allowed, though sometimes the princes start with the shoulda, woulda, coulda. Mostly they just tell their stories, eat their sauerkraut or noodle soup, drink slow beers and fast schnapps. Sometimes they play five-a-side against the wolves, or the fairies, who are tougher than anyone thinks. It's not the life they expected, but it is a life. At night, they sleep like beauty under faded ermine cloaks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're coming near the end. I have a piece that hopefully will open up on this. Okay. And I've titled it Translating the Untranslatable. And it's a non-fiction piece. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, as of the end of June 2024, 122.6 million men, women and children globally were forcibly displaced from their homes. This may be as a result of persecution, war, violence, or other human rights violations. Those statistics brought to mind the consequences of such displacement in relation to our own people, those forced to emigrate. In 2023, a fellow writer, Kieran Hodgers, contacted me. His friend Victoria McNulty, a poet from Glasgow, was looking, like many others, for some connection with place, a hint of home. She spoke of Cian Alas, a Scots Gaelic word which broadly means a longing for a home that no longer, or perhaps never did exist. The reverberations of this word, its sound carried on the lilt of a Scots Gaelic tongue on an Achill mountainside, caused an echo inside of me. In the early morning light, our conversations were muted, the veil thin. Viewing the landscape as a misbehaving body, carrying meanings hidden in the shadow beyond memory, we walked the seemingly barren Slievemore mountainside. From a language depository hidden in the crevices of tombs, ancient walls ending in nowhere, rocks that speak of gods, our conversation led to that of immigrants' letters, letters that hid more than what was contained in faded words. Cian Alas speaks to me of the loss of connection to the land from which we've come. This loss of connection is not in a nostalgic sense, not in a possessive sense, but the land sea has formed and informed us in a way we have difficulty putting into words. It is an embodied language, not easy to translate. This language holds within it an essence, the essence of who we are. This knowing, portrayed so viscerally in John B. King's poem, play and film of the same name, The Field. Loss of this knowing, this language, the meaning of this knowing, speaks of a sense of incompleteness, of Cian Alice. When asked in Irish, where are you from? Kirabashu. The reply, Rugu agus togu me in Achill. I was given birth to and reared or brought up in Achill. This speaks to me to be more than the family I was born into. There is the physical, emotional, spiritual and communal environment that influenced that rearing. Personally, I know I have been influenced by the physical surroundings in which I grew up, particularly the intertidal region of the seashore, a liminal, unboundaried place that for me as a child contained the universe in rock pools, the macro in the micro. Land to our Celtic ancestors was sacred. Not alone did it hold memory, but the energy of a particular place. A well, a river, a hill or mountain, trees and plants held healing properties. The Celtic mindset understood the cosmic energy exchange that happened in the skies, and mapping it onto the land imbued it with a sacred power. A spirituality grew out of that connection, and a respect for the land, the memory and the energy it holds. In many cultures, there is a word similar to Cian Alice. In Welsh culture, the word is hira, saudade in Portuguese culture. For people displaced from where they've called home, belonging becomes an imaginary space for what one perhaps never had, but thought they had. A connection to a distorted reality of what is lost or think is lost. Identity becomes porous, a bleeding as from a weeping wound. Broken-hearted, they wander in the dimmed light of another's eye in their search for belonging. The search to belong in a place that no longer exists, except in the imagination, is a search for what is missing, to heal what may have been broken or shattered, to come back home to the place of one's childhood and youth can be fraught with shadow, a fragile, sometimes fractured place. Displacement can be compared to a seismic occurrence, disrupting, splitting open, rearranging us. Earth is a way of rearranging itself along its fault lines. Our island here has been formed by the coming together of two diverse geological formations over 600 million years ago. Perhaps when we make the distinction between Upper and Lower Achill, we are feeling into something more primal, more elemental, that cannot be translated into language. The connection between land and language in a place like Achill and in the languages of Indigenous people worldwide is a reminder that perhaps it is not we who belong to the land, but that the land and the seas hold us. To listen to the whispers of the land and the sea is a remembering, a deeper calling us back to ourselves, calling us home. Thank you. Okay, we've nearly come to the end of the Heinrich Böll Weekend 2025. I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to Leisha and Diarmuid for just making the weekend, lifting in a special way. And thank you to all the people who were part of the weekend, those who made presentations, but that couldn't provide that same energy if we didn't have all the people who come, and especially those who come annually to be part of the weekend. Before I finish off, this gentleman here has asked me to give him a little bit of space because he wants to do something.
Right, I'm part of the audience showing appreciation. So I'm going to give a presentation. I should mention all the fantastic speakers we've seen earlier, who I can't remember all the names of, sorry, old fella. So I have one each for the musicians, as a kind of an individual something. Yeah, because they've entertained us royally. And this is my third time along here, and I can see the work that is done by the foundation here, and without their hard work, none of this would happen. So this is a small present which has both artistic, linguistic elements and a bit of art in it, which you can do whatever you would like with it. Anyway, as a special.
So, okay, introduce yourself. Introduce yourself.
Oh, I am Charles Smith. I live in Drunna, Kilbeena, and so I'm semi-local. It's about an hour's drive away from here, depending on the traffic. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed. Okay, I'm not going to keep you inside any longer with this beautiful Achill sunshine beaming down outside. I also want to thank our two walk leaders, Ross, and I don't know if you know not alone did Tomas lead our walk today, but he serenaded us up on the mountain beautifully. A song of his own writing and composing, which was beautiful. And we await his CD, which is in the making. Yes, we're putting the pressure on for us. Also, thank you to Seán. Thank you for all the work that you do in putting all of this together and keeping it as an archive into the future. Yeah, so thank you, Seán. Sinead, do you want to do a little?
Yeah, we'll finish something, yeah.
Thank you.